Well, good morning. My name is Adam Gordon. I'm here with Cindy Cipriani. We're from the U.S. Attorney's Office. What does that mean? So we are federal prosecutors. Federal prosecutors, we have jurisdiction over crimes that happen in San Diego County and Imperial County. And most importantly, today, we want to talk to you about issues that relate to the community, fentanyl, and unfortunately, body carriers as well. On the fentanyl side, these are really sad times. We had 821 people in San Diego County last year die of fentanyl overdoses. And it is a tragic and troubling figure that is unfortunately continued to grow, and we anticipate having close to 1,000 people overdose from fentanyl. So what do we need to talk about? Let's move on to some of these slides. So what is fentanyl? Fentanyl is a synthetic opioid, right? It is used to mimic what morphine was back in the day. Morphine is a pain reliever. It's a great thing to have. It's something that we need to have in our community for people who have serious, say, cancer diagnoses or suffering from a terminal illness. On the other side, there's fentanyl, which was developed for a good purpose, but now is being used by drug traffickers in our community to be laced in pills and powder form. It's incredibly powerful. So if you look at, I think the best example is like a sugar packet. You guys have probably seen, right? So if you take out a sugar packet, rip it open, and then pour it out on your desk, like 1 gram of that little fentanyl, 1 little grain of that fentanyl would be enough to be fatal. So what is fentanyl in these days? It's in 2 main things. It's in pills and it's in powder. Why is it in pills? Well, it used to be back in the day that people would have prescriptions for, say, like oxycodone or Adderall or Xanax, right? Just like standard drugs that I'm sure you guys have seen around. But what's actually happening now is that there are these fake pill mills. So the drugs are being manufactured most of the time in Mexico, and they're actually not prescription pills. These are counterfeit pills that are laced with fentanyl. Why on earth would people lace pills with fentanyl? That doesn't make any sense. Like, why wouldn't they just make the real drugs? Well, the reason they do that is because fentanyl is extremely cheap. It is a very, very like substance that it doesn't take a lot of time, it doesn't take a lot of effort. The chemistry is not that advanced. So you can actually create this deadly fentanyl in these laboratories. You can have these pill presses create these fake pills, and then they're imported into the United States, a lot of times by body carriers, sometimes in vehicles. Why does that happen, right? Well, the reason it happens is because those drugs are then consumed in the United States. Now, most of the times with people of, talking about this particular age, we're talking about like 14-year-olds to 18-year-olds, right? Because obviously we're at a high school and this is what we care about. So in these high schools, people sometimes are approached about taking drugs, right? You're at somebody's house or at a party or whatever it is, and somebody actually comes up to you and talks to you about like, hey, I got this out of a medicine cabinet, or here's a friend who just like gave me something or has something, and then there's just a pill in front of you, and then maybe they just say like, hey, this is my Adderall prescription, or they say, oh, no, this is all cool because I got this from like my cousin and he's got some like, whatever, he has Xanax and he takes like Xanax pills, like just very standard sort of normal stuff in high school. Unfortunately, the vast majority of those pills are fake pills. And it's not that somebody's like trying to kill somebody else. It's just that the source of supply of these pills, unless you actually like walk up to a pharmacy, get those pills from a pharmacy and like walk out with the pills, the odds are those pills have fentanyl. Well, why does that matter, right? Well, you take 1 pill, maybe there's like 5 or 6 of you at a party or 5 or 6 of you at a house, 1 person takes the pill, nothing happens. That happens all the time. But unfortunately, when you have these actual pills being consumed, remember how they're made in a place that's not a factory. They're being made these like, just kind of Exactly. So we're having these makeshift labs. Think about it as like chocolate chip cookies. Like, as you're doing baking, or what's like Great British Baking or anything like that. If you have, like, let's say you dump a bunch of chocolate chip cookies into a batter. Oh, perfect. And so then you're actually going and making the pills. Right, just think about it. So some cookies have a lot of chocolate chip cookies and some don't. Just the nature of how you're like stirring them up. Because you're not like Nabisco where they're going to be 7 chocolate chip cookies in every cookie, right? They're not standardized. So if you watch, here's like 5 pills, for example. I know I have to like sort of stay in the camera range, but if you see down at the bottom right, you could be with friends, they could take 1 pill and nothing happens because the active substance in the fentanyl is not actually that much in any one particular pill. So if you have 5 kids sitting around, they break out the pills, 1 person, nothing happens. 2nd pill, nothing happens. 3rd pill, nothing happens. 4th pill, nothing happens. It just so happens because the pills are not made in a place where it's actually like standardized. The 5th pill is a fatal pill. And we wouldn't be here like Cindy and I talking to you about this, except we're losing a bunch of kids. So this used to not be a thing. Back in 2019, unfortunately, we had like 4 fatal fentanyl overdose deaths. The latest stats I had just from last year, we had 17. And that's not even the final statistics from the medical examiners. It's probably gonna be about 20 kids last year fatally overdosed. And that's just the fatal overdoses, right? That's not even including the non-fatal overdoses. Because we have this really good stuff that Cindy's gonna talk to you about Narcan and how you can like basically help prevent an overdose. But the moral of the story is that unfortunately, we're losing way too many kids. And it's the same scenario basically every single time. It's somebody shows up to a party or somebody's at a house and all of a sudden it's like, hey, the pills came out, somebody's doing a pill, maybe they crush up a pill, right? And then they snort the pill and no one's trying to kill anybody else. Like, it's not like one kid is trying to kill another kid. Why would they do that? It's idiotic. That's not what's happening. What is happening is that people are actually consuming these pills at these settings. And then how do you know if somebody's overdosing or if they're just like tired or maybe they're drunk and they're drinking as well? And then you just kind of like put them in a bed and they're just kind of like in and out of it. I mean, you don't know. You're not expecting to have a fatal overdose. Why would you ever expect like a fatal overdose at a party? It's not like something that's going through everybody's mind at the party. You know how it is when there's parties or stuff going on. You're downstairs. Some people are upstairs. You know, you may be watching TV, whatever it is. Like, you're not constantly paying attention to somebody else. And the thing is with these pills, you know, you don't expect like a Xanax pill to be fatal or somebody's Adderall pill to be fatal. You know, it's not something that's just in the realm of experience or sort of even something that's expected. And it was much different in my day. Like in my day, people were talking about how marijuana was a gateway drug and it's dangerous. Yes, absolutely. But the risk associated with drug use was totally different. We weren't talking about fatalities associated with one-time drug use. Like that was not a conversation that we ever had because why would we? It just wasn't a thing. And so now all of a sudden, because you have these fentanyl basically everywhere in all of these pills, now we have these situations, right? So it's the same stories all the time. It's fentanyl overdoses, fentanyl overdoses, fentanyl overdoses. And if you guys like look at the news or even Google like fentanyl overdoses, unfortunately it's happening to this age group and this demographics. Okay, so what should we be thinking about both from your guys' perspective, but also from the parents' perspective? One is, the good news is that about 5% of 8th graders self-report. You know, we've got all these things up on the wall about like the surveys. So about 5% of kids in 8th grade, and I know you guys aren't in 8th grade, let's just start with 8th grade, self-report using drugs other than weed. Okay, about 5%. So that means if we got all these chairs filled, there are about 20 chairs in this class, that means we got 1 kid out of the 20 who's at least in the 8th grade level self-reporting to using drugs other than marijuana. That's good. That means that a lot of kids aren't doing it. So that's exceptional. That's good news, right? But we know as kids get closer to 12th grade, they're more likely to use stuff other than marijuana. Okay. So what are we actually looking at about higher risk? Well, again, we're not talking about 90% of of any particular classroom you walk into, but there certainly are kids who have higher risk, right? It could be based on traumatic offense, impulse control, family history, diagnosed mental health issues, and I would throw up there like social media as well, right? There's just a lot more depression. You see like the articles that we talk about all the time. I'm sure you guys have seen this, like social media is linked to depression and all that stuff. Your guys' lives are just a lot different than my life. I'm 41 years old, like I turn 41 tomorrow. Your guys' life 25 years, or my life 25 years ago is much different than your guys'. I didn't know social media. right? That didn't even exist. Facebook didn't even hit till I was in college, right? I certainly didn't have drugs that were, as fatal as what you guys encounter, or at least have the possibility of encountering, okay? So there's these risks that are kind of embedded in people, and everybody's different, and everybody lives their own life and has their own path. But there are risks, right? And as long as you're sort of identifying those risks, and what is it to be a good person in school? Like what makes you somebody who can be sort of counteracting against the problem? Well, it's a bunch of things. One is just recognizing this. And that's why Cindy and I are here, right? Cindy and I are here because too many kids are dying. And if too many kids weren't dying, we wouldn't be here on Saturday morning. They're just all across San Diego County, we're losing way too many kids. And that's the important part is, this idea of, hey, I'm just curious, I just want to experiment. It's incredibly deadly in a way that it didn't used to be, right? And specifically with these pills. And if I could so we were in Rancho Buena Vista, and we had 1,200 kids there earlier this week, and it was the same exact message. The kids just need to be aware, right? Because people are going to make decisions. Like, I can't stop. I'm using YouTube because you guys are just sitting here, but you should tell your friends. I mean, legitimately, you should tell your friends, hey, I don't ask you to narc on people. I'm not asking you to call anybody or say this person's doing this or this person's doing that. But when you see pills being broken out at a party or at somebody's house, that is an extremely bad idea. And it is just risky in a way that is completely different than what it used to be. So it's not about being a narc. It's not about calling me and being hey, you're not hear us talking about law enforcement. We're not talking about cops. We're not talking about getting people arrested. We're talking about hopefully having you guys make better decisions. It's the same thing with the parents. We do these the presentations for the parents as well, because the parents need to know hey, when these pills are floating around, you have to be active. The parents need to be having conversations, whether it's the parents, the guardians, or whoever, having conversations with their kids. We need to have a level of information to people that just doesn't exist. Did you guys know that there were these many bad fentanyl pills? I mean, legitimately. And this is not a criticism to you at all. This is our fault. Us meaning people of our generation, because we're not telling you guys this. Because how can we expect you to be looking at, Googling fentanyl overdoses on the internet? Why would you be doing that? And unfortunately, a lot of times we have to go to schools where they've lost somebody, and so where I come in is I prosecute the people who sell the fatal pills, right? That's how law enforcement gets involved. We don't want to get involved. I want to have 0 cases. It's not my goal to have cases. It's my goal to actually stop this use. Because if I could snap my fingers right now, I can tell you exactly what I do. I would snap my fingers and everybody between 14 and 18 years old would know that pills are deadly. That's it. That's all I want to be able to communicate to people. Because if we know that, then ultimately I can't stop people from making decisions. There are 100% going to be people who, despite the fact that this is risky, people still smoke, right? They know the risks, they know it causes cancer, fine. But if people at least knew that, hey, if I recreationally use a pill, that it potentially could be deadly, that is a much different risk calculus. That's much, much different than just being hey, I took a pill at a party. I had no expectation that it could actually even be harmful. It was just recreational drug use. I hate the term recreational drug use because we, meaning the adults, have not communicated appropriately that there's this high side risk. Okay? All right, so I'm gonna let Cindy go now.
Did you want to do this part?
Oh, yeah, okay. This is actually really important stuff. We're gonna give you a fun one, and I get this one too, so. But now I'm just gonna get in trouble. I can't even do this slide.
Can you guys guess which one's the real Beyonce?
Yeah.
Left, you think?
2. I still want.
2. All right, we all
It's a trick
disagree.
question, so I'll just say 2. Okay. Yeah.
Pretty hard to tell. All right, how about the real Nikes? Look exactly the same. We're thinking 2 is the real one?
Yeah.
You're right. You're right on
That's
that. All right, let's try some fake Percocets.
I think the fake one is number 1. What do you think, guys?
Number 1's real.
Number 1's real. Okay, so 2's fake.
Two's fake, all right, it gets harder, just warning you. All right, and this also happens with Xanax. We commonly see these blue M30s, which are fake oxycodone, but we've also seen fentanyl laced in Xanax, Adderall, and other prescription pills. It looks just like the prescription pill that you would get at a pharmacy, but it is not. Can you tell the difference? No
I'll
one
say
can
one's
tell.
fake.
One's fake, two's fake. This just goes to show you, it's a little bit of Russian roulette. You're just guessing, right? Just like you guess in Russian roulette, which number's going to come up. Are you going to be a winner or a loser? You don't know. All right, these are the blue M30s that we've commonly seen in so many of these teen deaths. Any guesses?
One's fake.
Okay, got that one right. It gets harder. Okay, which one's the real thing?
Two.
They're both fake.
Yeah.
So I think when they did an analysis of the pills that are out there, they found that 30% of the fake pills out there had a lethal dose. And that's according to DEA. And they've confiscated millions of these pills in campaigns across the country. Just, trying to get pills off the street has been a #1 priority. This will give you a sense just how hard it is to tell. And I think just from talking to Adam, you've got an idea of what the dangers are that are associated with this. And I would just ask, do you feel like kids in your school know about those dangers or have ever heard of fentanyl? I'm getting
No.
shaking of the heads. They don't know. They don't know. It's actually increased the teen death rate in 2 years by 3 times. 3 times the teen death rate from drug overdose. And actually for African-American kids, it's 5 times. So it really is having a huge impact. And some people hear from word of mouth. Some schools are bringing in teams like our team to come in and warn folks. But it's also wonderful if teens can warn teens. Sometimes peer messaging is the best way to get the message across about what the dangers are. So what can we do? There are a lot of different things that parents can do, that you as teens and fellow students can do. And that those of us who work with schools and in the community can do. I mean, obviously the best thing is prevention, no drug use, healthy choices, communicating those messages, right? And we know that that will work for a number of people, and for a number they're going to experiment. And so you kind of move along that spectrum and you try to address every part of that spectrum, both encouraging people not to use it all, arming them with information so they'll understand all the risks of what they're doing, and then responding to those risks when something happens. So screening and intervention, identifying someone in need, recognizing if somebody is on Snapchat. That's where a lot of kids get these pills. They get them using emojis on their phone. So if you see a kid, maybe your brother, your sister, another student who's spending a lot of time on sites like Snapchat, communicating with strangers, and is more likely to be at risk for all the reasons we discussed earlier, that is good to know. Overdose prevention is super, super important because fortunately, with fentanyl, we have a drug called naloxone. Have you ever heard of naloxone before? All right, it's really easy to get. You can actually get it. It's very easy to use as well. It's a nasal spray, so you don't have to give anyone a shot. You can get it for free at multiple different locations around the county. And we have actually made a commitment in San Diego County to get another 30 to 100,000 doses out there in the hands of people, so be in a position to save someone. So basically what naloxone does is it attaches to the opioid agonist in the brain and kind of shuts down the response that opiates have in the system. And basically when you take a drug like fentanyl that's an opioid, it's basically shutting your system down. And so what we are trying to do is educate people on what an overdose looks like, and also have them understand that if they have naloxone, they can reverse that overdose. They should also call 911 and get the person to the hospital, because chances are when the naloxone wears off, they can relapse. But we really want to encourage getting naloxone, carrying naloxone. If you don't have naloxone on you, calling 911. All the police officers now have naloxone. It's in your school too. The school nurses are carrying naloxone. All the first responders have naloxone. So, and I think just, people who know that someone around them is at risk are carrying naloxone. We're trying to give it to folks to not use alone, so that when somebody leaves The biggest chance of dying is if you're leaving a rehab center or you're leaving custody. And we just saw a juvenile on probation left custody and she died on the walk center. Her father's been working, she died of fentanyl overdose, and her father's been working to raise awareness and to help kids on probation understand what those risks are, and also parents of kids on probation who are already justice involved and so at greater risk understand to call the lock zone, call 911. Now, a lot of people worry if you call 911, you're going to get arrested. You're with a drug user, maybe you took a pill too, maybe you gave the person a pill, that you potentially could get arrested. There is protection for folks who call 911. It's called the Good Samaritan Law. And the idea is we want to encourage people to call 911. So unless you are a drug distributor who's buying and distributing and drug trafficking a number of doses, you are not really going to be looked at for prosecution. And so we want you to err on the side of safety, keeping someone safe and calling 911. We're also really trying to expand treatment and recovery options for people. And now more than ever, it's possible to recover from opioid addiction. I know you've all probably studied the opioid crisis. And for a long time, they didn't really understand how to help people get well. A relapse is part of this condition, but it is possible to get better. Now they have something called medication-assisted treatment, where they give you a drug that sort of blocks the opioid euphoric effects, but satisfies your brain's need. If you've been doing opioids for a while, your brain pretty much to get dopamine, which is a motivating chemical in your body, you need that opioid because your brain has become dependent on it. And so they found ways to keep the euphoria out, but the dopamine in, and that's enabling people to get better and to live a normal life. So recovery is possible for most teens in your set. Most teens are doing this recreationally, but there are some teens who do get addicted. Some have a sports injury and they start taking opioids prescribed because they had a sports injury or some sort of traumatic event. They broke a leg or a wrist, and they're on opioids for a short period of time, and they find they're unprepared for the euphoria that gives them. That's not everyone, but a subset of kids can get addicted in a very, very short period of time. So some teens are taking fentanyl because of an opioid addiction or dependence, and some are taking it, as Adam was saying, purely recreationally. Because somebody gave it to them at a party, they thought it was a Xanax. So there are different kinds of users out there and different strategies for those users. So what we'd like to do with parents is to really encourage them, talk early to your kids, talk often to your kids. It's not easy to have a conversation with your kids about drugs. You run the risk of the parents just sort of blah, 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 blah in the background. The kid's not really listening and you feel like you're not really connecting. You don't know the best way to approach it. You don't want to seem suspicious, and at the same time, you want to arm your child with the information they need. So basically what we do suggest is just to have an open conversation, not to be judgmental, to basically say, it happens, that you want to arm your child with the best information that's out there, to set limits you can live with. We also really, really encourage having a strategy plan for a rescue. So I don't know whether either of you have this with your parents, but if you're at a party where everyone's drinking, people are too drunk to drive, right? That you can call your parents and give them a code word and they know to come and get you, and they're not going to ask any questions and you're not going to get in trouble, but they want you to be safe. And so we really encourage kids and parents to talk about that so that they know that there's a safe adult that they can call to get rescued from any situation where they feel like, I think I'm in over my head. So if you're at a party where somebody's passing around pills that look like prescription pills, but now you know better, you could use that strategy to say, something's come up. My parents are telling me I need to get home. And you could have that code with your parents. And we really do encourage parents to show, to be concerned about this and to be just kind of keep it at the discussion level. So it never turns into, I'm ordering you, I'm telling you what to do. It's more, you're asking open-ended questions, you're having a dialogue, and you're arming your team with information that they need. All right, it's also important to monitor social media. So you want to respect your team's privacy, right? But it's good to at least have an idea of where your teen is online, what sites they're at, how often they're online. And this is true for a variety of emotional health situations, not just the drug situation, but a lot of these drugs are getting sold on social media. And social media is also a place where you can get recruited for juvenile smuggling to carry drugs across the border, and that particularly happens in certain areas of San Diego, including the South Bay area. And that's something that can really affect your life, have collateral consequences down the line for you, and really affect your future. So we encourage parents to set limits, to talk with kids about what they're posting, to have some idea of what's happening on social media. Next slide. These are just some of the emoji codes, and there are a couple more, Adam, if you could pull them up. Just some of the emoji codes for the drugs that are getting sold online. So you can have a whole conversation about drugs and buy drugs online without ever saying the word drug or any of these statements online. Basically, you're communicating in code. And it's pretty clear to the people who do this exactly what it is you want. And law enforcement is now cracked the code. So these come from DEA. And there's actually a handout on this over at the resource table. But basically, this will give you an idea of the ways that you can engage in that kind of subterfuge and the ways parents can be fooled into thinking, no, everything is harmless, nothing dangerous is happening. But if you're aware of these codes, it helps to understand that it can happen without you really having any idea. You're seeing a chocolate chip cookie and an airplane and a Christmas tree. None of that is cluing in for you. But once you look at all the emoji codes, it's like a crack in the code and it all makes a little bit more sense. So when it gives you an idea of what kind of risk am I facing with my teen child, right? If you're seeing those kinds of emojis. Now, there are also a lot of non-opioid alternatives for managing pain. So I talked to you a little bit about some of the risks of even taking prescription medicine that is an opioid for a short period of time. Sometimes can create a dependence and a certain feeling and a real interest in opioids for a teen. So we encourage parents to kind of monitor what those scripts look like. And I will say the prescribing protocols have changed a lot. Used to be, if you guys had your wisdom teeth out yet?
Not yet, I'm about to.
You're about to. Okay, it used to be you get your wisdom teeth out, you get like a 30-day supply of pills. Now that's down to maybe 1 day. Or 2 days, because you don't really need that, but 30 days is long enough to get somebody on opioids. So people have really changed. Doctors and dentists have really changed the way they prescribe, but not all doctors and dentists have. So it's really wise to, as a parent, to kind of take a look at that and say, I want to have at least a conversation. I don't want to be second guessing my doctor or dentist. I at least want to have a conversation to know how long, and do you think it's necessary? Can we try ibuprofen on day 2 or 3 after the wisdom teeth instead of this? And you'll all be better off if you have those conversations. Securing meds in the home. So what we found from studies is that every teen who is arrested basically fills out a report for a group called SANDAG, and they do a basic study of what drugs juveniles have taken. They do it for adult and they do it for juveniles. And the juveniles who've taken opioids or who are starting to experiment with opioids, most of them, 62% of them, their first opioid was from the medicine cabinet of their mom or their grandparent and someone in the family. So it's really important to keep the meds locked up in your home. So I have a safe, my meds are in my safe. So I know that my kids are never going to get my meds. And I also, when I'm done with the meds, I'm sending them over to, there are a lot of different places where you can drop them off. Like, I'm done, I don't want these around anymore, drop them off. And I did a press conference last year with the Veterinary Society about dropping off the meds for Chewy, my dog, who had cancer. He was on some really strong drugs. I didn't even think about dropping off his drugs. But it's true that sometimes people will actually go through, when there's an open house for sale, sometimes people who are opioid dependent will go through and look for drugs in open homes, family homes. And so it's just really important to get rid of all expired opioid medication, and if you're actively taking a prescription, to keep it locked up. There's all kinds of drop-off locations, sheriff stations, a lot of pharmacies are doing this now. They're all over the county, and you can see the list at that website. All right, so this is what I was talking to you about, so we don't have to spend a lot of time on this, but it's just important to know this is under a California health and safety code, this Good Samaritan law. And if they want witnesses, if they see a drug-related overdose, to call 911 and seek emergency help. And so there are all kinds of protections for you out there if you do it. And in fact, if you were the person that sold the drug, that's even viewed as a very positive fact in that scenario as well, even if law enforcement is getting involved because you sold drugs. Do you know the signs of an overdose? We see so many situations where people don't call 911 because they're like, he just fell asleep, just snoring a little bit. Yeah, no big deal. But really that snoring, that shallow breathing, that kind of gurgling sound is a warning sign that the airway is closing down, right? So if you're seeing somebody turn blue, or their lips, fingernails, or skin are a little blue, they seem a little bit sweaty, but the deep sleep where you can't really wake them up, they're throwing up, or they're making snoring sounds, call 911. Those are all signs of an overdose. Administer naloxone, obviously, if you have it, but if you don't, or if you see something like that happening in school, call the nurse, and they may have naloxone. We really want to see naloxone everywhere, widely available, so that people don't have to die. Some people have reported that they've been administered naloxone 3 or 4 times. But as long as that person is alive, there's a chance we can get them into treatment. And every time somebody is administered naloxone, if they go to the ER afterwards, there's a bridge program that provides them a pathway to get them into treatment. So we try to view this from every different possible perspective. So save a life, carry naloxone, very easy to use. It's basically training is out there. You can watch a YouTube video on training, you're ready to go. It takes about 10 minutes to get trained. And lots of places to get it, and those are all identified here. So if you suspect that your teen is using opioids or counterfeit pills, there are a number of steps you can take. You can ensure your own home is safe, have your child evaluated. There are ways to get your child into treatment, listening for change talk, somebody who's feeling overwhelmed. Next slide. The kinds of things, you might hear about depression. I'm really depressed. My grades are going down. I'm really upset. I broke up with my boyfriend or girlfriend. The kinds of things that really, really cause a lot of distress. Just having that relationship where you're hearing that change talk and you're encouraging a conversation, and you're providing hopefully access maybe to a counselor or some other resources to address those situations so people aren't feeling like the need to turn to drugs. But there are also all kinds of different resources. 211 is a great resource. Everybody knows about calling 911. Have you ever thought about calling 211? A lot of people don't even know 211 exists. 211 exists to provide resources to people. So if you see someone who needs help, they need housing, or they need referral to mental health treatment. All kinds of problems are addressed by 211. So consider that, and they can always refer you to the Access Crisis Line, which is a longer phone number that you might not remember. So just call 211 and they'll figure out if there's somebody you need to get into treatment. They'll talk to you about insurance, about options. They are navigators, and they will help you navigate through to get to the right place eventually. And then there's also the Prescription Drug Abuse Task Force. There are a lot of sites online. The Prescription Drug Abuse Task Force started when the opioid problem was just beginning to be out of control. And we started seeing people die from taking too many prescription opioids and often switching to heroin. And now that same task force, which is the San Diego Prescription Drug Abuse Task Force, is now focusing on fentanyl and really devoting a lot of efforts to fentanyl because of the risk that fentanyl causes. So I'm the co-chair of that task force. There are all kinds of materials on the task force website about fentanyl, about naloxone, informational resources. So it's just a good place to go. DEA has information as well. This Rally Cares virtual trailer is fantastic. It basically is a trailer. It used to be like if you went to a conference, you would get to walk through this in person. And I've done that in the past at conferences, and it's really enlightening. But basically it shows everywhere a teen can hide drugs. So you might be thinking this is just, oh, it's a book. Then you open it up and realize, no, it's a container. And there are all kinds of different ways to hide drugs, vaping equipment that will just give you a clue to what's really happening in your teen's life. And they take you through that virtually. And then there are a number of different sites that are really designed to help parents and to help parents have conversations, to help families who are coping with mental health and also substance use disorders, and to basically provide information. Now, this last one, Dead on Arrival, you can find that on YouTube. It's a documentary, and it's all about the parents who've lost their kids from counterfeit pills. And so you really get a sense of, 14-year-olds, 16-year-olds, these kids who have these incredibly bright futures ahead of them, who had no idea the risks they were taking and the impact of what it leaves behind with the parents. And so it's really powerful. I think it's a powerful thing for kids to see, as well as parents, to just realize the nature and extent of the problem that's out there. So our goal is just to arm you with information and to be there if you need more, if you have questions. So if you have any questions, let us know. Are there questions online? I'm not sure if we can take questions online from our virtual audience.
Good question. I'm not sure.
We need to check.
Look at a chat. Okay.
And while he's looking, I'm happy to answer any questions you all have here in our physical audience.
Go for it.
If you called it for someone with that overdose, would they get in trouble from would they get prosecuted for using?
The users do not get prosecuted. What we're looking to do, unless they're major drug dealers at the same time, we're really looking to people who are major sources of supply, not people who are users, and particularly not people who are addicts. So, no.
It looks like chat was disabled for the meeting.
Okay, I think there was a way we could have enabled it, but yeah, they were a little confused at that point about what our technological options were, to say the least.
So you guys learned something? Kind of scary, right? Yeah. I mean, it's obviously not our goal to scare you, but I truly do wish that we would do a better job with high school kids. And unfortunately, we're going to middle schools now as well and saying the same thing. So it's not ideal that we have to have these conversations, but.
We can do it live, we can do it virtually. If you want to bring it to your school, we're happy to do it. Because it really, as you can see, we can do it in 45 minutes. It's pretty quick, and it is a lot of really valuable information. So we're happy to do that. If anybody online who's listening would like a presentation somewhere else, let us know. We're trying to get out there. Everything from faith-based groups to wherever someone's already gathered, that's usually the best place to share the message, because you find the most people. So. All right, thank you.
Thanks, guys. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.